Hey up! Right, we're back on with the Royal Enfield Classic 350 REborn. Things got held up a little bit last year. As you know, the bike was off the road for 3 months with a faulty speedometer. And by the time I got the bike back, we were pretty much in the depths of winter, so I just put the free flow performance air filter in, and the next stage was to sort the exhaust out. And on this occasion I've gone for the Hitchcock's polished stainless steel free flow exhaust system. Now the DNA performance filter helps the bike take deep breaths more easily now, and the whole point of a free flow exhaust of course is to allow it to breathe out easily, which in turn helps with a quicker engine pickup. It helps the engine to get rid of excess heat more easily, and it may even make the bike a little bit more sprightly and improve the MPG figures a little bit. But I think more importantly for me on this occasion, it returns the 350 Classic REborn to that more original minimal aesthetics. Now the OEM exhaust system that comes with this bike, it's not the worst in the world. Actually, I think Royal Enfield did a better job with that than they did on the old 350 and 500 Classics, but there was still room for improvement. It was a little bit bulky and in your face for my tastes. I mean, I know that the exhaust system is one of the focal points of a motorcycle, but this just, for me, dominates the whole aesthetics of the bike. And I wanted something that was a little bit more in proportion with the motorcycle. In this video, I'm just going to go through the fitting procedure, or should I say removal of the old system and fitting procedure for the new system. I wouldn't say that this Hitchcock's exhaust system is any louder than the original, but the acoustics are much better. I'll let you have a quick listen before we get started, but I will be doing a full sound test video at a later date. I will of course leave a link for this exhaust system, which is a complete system by the way, in the video description down below on Hitchcock's website. Right, so let's get on with it. Different people might have different ideas about the sort of safe removal, if you like, of the old system. I've done it the way that I considered to work out the best. If you've got different ideas, that's fine. Do it your way. This video is just for guidance. The first thing to do really is to get the midsection heat shield off, because this covers up the unions that you're going to need to get access to. It's just 3 bolts, and once you've removed those bolts, the heat shield itself will just lift away easily. You're not going to need this or any of these fasteners again for this installation, but obviously I would advise that you put them somewhere safe so that they don't get lost, because you might want to return the bike back to original at some stage in the future. Once you've done that, loosen off the Jubilee clip that holds the silencer onto the black part, which is your catalytic converter. For some reason I forgot to film that, so my apologies, but obviously you ain't going to get the silencer off without undoing that Jubilee clip. Once you've done that, you can turn your attention to the exhaust silencer hanging bracket. There's just one bolt holding this on, and it doesn't have a captive nut at the back, so you're going to have to get a suitable size spanner on the back of this. What I will say, to do this job all you need is a reasonably comprehensive set of combination spanners and a small socket set going up to 14mm. Oh, and a flat screwdriver to remove the exhaust header gasket ready for fitting the new one. And once you've got that nut off the back, you can then gently remove the actual nut itself, making sure that you take the weight of the silencer as you do so, and just coax the silencer free of the catalytic converter. Next up, once you've got that removed, is to turn your attention to the O2 sensor. These can sometimes be delicate little pieces of apparatus, so it's best to unfasten it and just get it free of your header before you go any further. The last thing you want to do is try and remove the actual header itself and find you've still got the O2 sensor attached. Just loosen it off with a 17mm open-ended spanner and then unscrew it with your fingers. There will be a little bit of resistance there, because for each turn of the thread you're effectively sort of winding up the wiring itself. The manufacturers do take this into account when they install these, so don't worry, it's very unlikely that you're going to break anything unless you're particularly ham-fisted with it. Once you've undone it, just allow it to hang free, ready for reinstallation when you get your new header pipe on. Next up, release or just loosen off the nuts on your exhaust header clamp. I came across a little issue here, because on the outer stud, the stud itself preferred to unscrew from the exhaust port rather than the dome nut unscrewing. Now, this is not ideal, but it's more common than you think. I've had this on a number of bikes over the year. I've even had it on cars when messing around with exhaust manifolds. It happens, and when it does, there's nothing you can do about it. I did try a bit of releasing oil on the nut itself and left it for half an hour to sink in to see if that would do any good. It didn't. Now, when I looked at the specs, Royal Enfield do seem to tighten these up quite a lot. It's something like 21 or 22 Newton meter, which it does seem a little bit excessive for exhaust nuts, but it is what it is. The removal procedure is still exactly the same. Obviously, you've just got to be very careful in making sure that you don't cause any damage when you withdraw that stud. Now, the downpipe was still supported by the central mounting bracket, which we'll move on to in a moment. So I took the decision here to withdraw the stud altogether, because I didn't want the pipe sort of flapping about and potentially causing damage to the threads. As I say, it's not the end of the world, it just means you have to be a little bit more careful when you're sort of carrying out this part of the procedure. Once you've done that, you can then remove the sort of mid-section mounting bracket which fastens the catalytic converter onto the frame of the bike. This is a captive nut, so you can approach it just from the front. It comes off pretty easily. And you can then go ahead and remove the entire sort of catalytic converter and downpipe installation. Obviously, it is going to be better to be able to replace that stud and then fit the new header on as you would normally fit a new header onto two studs. So there are one or two things you can try. Normally I would attempt putting a little bit of heat on the nut just to slacken it off. Unfortunately, the gas canister on my blow lamp is empty, so I tried some mole grips and again some more releasing fluid to just try and loosen this off. It soon became apparent to me that this thing is stuck fast, and there was a big danger that I was actually going to end up damaging the stud itself just for the sake of getting the nut off it. So in the end I decided to leave it how it was and just use the actual stud itself to fasten the new exhaust headers back on. Like I said earlier, the end result will be exactly the same. It's just a little bit more care and attention is required on reinstallation if this happens to you. Right, once again, because those headers have been clamped down so tightly, I did struggle to get the actual copper gasket out. It was pressed right into the seat. Now, don't use a hammer or anything to do this, but get a flat-bladed screwdriver and dig it into the actual gasket itself to cut it in half, or cut a section out of it so you can get the screwdriver underneath and then lever it out. You might mark the seating on the port a little bit, but as long as you're careful, that's not going to make any difference. The new gasket will soak that difference up. Looking at the force that's been used to press this gasket into place, you're going to struggle to remove it without, making some marks at least. I think the key to this is just be patient and careful, and then get your new exhaust gasket ready to fit. This gasket is included with your Hitchcock's exhaust kit, and you will notice that on one side of it there is a seam. This should be placed into the exhaust port with that seam facing outwards towards the flange of your new downpipe. I'm not sure if it would really make much difference if you got it the wrong way around, but there is a possible danger of it not sealing properly if you put it in with that seam on the inside. You can then get on with fitting your new downpipe. Now this is single skin, so it's substantially lighter than the OEM unit. Refit the OEM exhaust clamp collar over the flange on your new exhaust and carefully line everything up so that you can start putting the fasteners back in place. Obviously this is a little bit more complicated when you have this stud problem, but either way, you know, don't panic, just take your time, be patient, and make sure that you've got everything lined up correctly. You don't want to be crossing any threads or anything at this stage. I am undoubtedly making this look a little bit more difficult than it actually is. What you've got to remember is that I have to give the camera the best angle of view so that you can see what I'm doing. In turn, that means I can't see what I'm doing when I'm filming these sequences, so I'm sort of fumbling and feeling my way as I go along. Just bear that in mind. Make sure that the flange of your downpipe is pressed firmly against that gasket, and then carefully get your threads engaged. The good thing about this replacement downpipe is that it's single skinned and it's very lightweight. It is one of those jobs where you feel like you need a third hand, if you know what I mean, in order to be able to do it, but you know, having a second person helping you wouldn't help because you need that eye to hand coordination to do it. Just be patient and feel your way in, then gradually tighten each of the fasteners up in turn so that you're evenly pressing that clamp down onto the gasket. And the good thing about this pipe being quite lightweight is that you can fasten those studs all the way down and they will easily support the weight of this downpipe. As you're tightening these studs up, keep checking on either side to make sure that the studs have been wound in by about the same amount each time. The important thing is that you need to sort of clamp this flange down evenly. If it's at an angle, it might not seal properly, and your downpipe might not meet up properly with your silencer when it comes to fit it. So, you know, just do them a little bit either side each time. Make sure that you're clamping it down evenly on both sides. That's the most important thing. That way you're clamping the pressure down onto that gasket evenly so that it seals properly, and you're not putting any undue sideways pressure on those studs. Once you've got the header tightened up and you're convinced that it's seated properly, attention to fitting the silencer. Now, in your kit you will find a silencer fitting bracket that has a couple of stainless steel bolts and some washers with it. Now, looking at this silencer, the tail end is to the right of the picture as you're looking at it, with the end that connects onto your downpipes on the left hand side of the screen. Inside the bracket assembly that is welded onto the actual silencer itself are two non-captive or semi-captive nuts. Fasten the mounting bracket as you see me doing here into those nuts, but just leave them slightly loose because they are designed so that they can be easily adjusted for position when it comes to actually marrying everything up on the bike. And once you've got those bolts in place, you can then offer the silencer up to the bike to see how it's going to fit. Take the stainless steel Jubilee clip that comes with the kit and make sure that that is threaded onto your downpipe before you try to insert the actual silencer onto it. Carefully thread your silencer onto the downpipe. Be careful not to put too much pressure on it, but it should slide on reasonably easy. And then line your fixing bracket up behind the foot peg hanger. You can then reinsert the original bolt through the hole and hold it in place. As I've said, you've got multiple points of adjustment with this bracket, so if at first it looks like things don't line up properly, i.e. you've got a kink where the silencer sort of joins onto the downpipe, just make sure that it isn't a case of it just needs readjusting at the actual bracket itself. If you're able to fit it all so that the whole pipe looks horizontal and there are no kinks in it, all is good. If you're not able to do that, it could be a sign that you've not managed to seat your actual header pipe properly in at the exhaust port, so that might need looking at again if you have a problem there. If all fits and lines up properly, as you can see here, you can then just slide your Jubilee clip onto the silencer itself and then tighten it up and clamp it in place. You can then go ahead and tighten all the fasteners up on the mounting bracket before coming back to that Jubilee clip and making sure that it's tightened up properly. Right, we're nearly there. That's all the structural work done. We just have to replace the O2 sensor. I always found the best way to sort of get one of these on is twist the cable anti-clockwise 3, maybe 4 tens, just, you know, sort of suck it and see. If it feels like you're putting too much pressure on it, stop. What this does is it just gives you that sort of bit of leeway so that when you're screwing it in, you're not twisting it the other way too far. Once you've got it seated in, tighten it up, but don't over tighten it. It's very likely that during the fitting you've got a lot of smudgy, greasy finger marks all over this entire exhaust system. When you start the exhaust up, it's going to get hot, and sometimes those finger marks can stain even stainless steel, which will then result in you having to clean them off with some metal polish or something later on. It's best to avoid that if you can, so get a clean workshop wipe and just thoroughly wipe down the entire system to remove any marks or smudges before you start the engine up. It just helps you to avoid a little bit of unnecessary work later on. Right, so the final process is conditioning or acclimatising your ECU to the new setup. Start your engine up, don't rev it, and just allow it to idle for between 5 and 10 minutes. After that, you can rev the engine slightly just to make sure everything's okay, but it is not best practice to simply start the bike up and then ride off. Any motorcycle built since 2015 should have an adaptive or learning ECU. That's what the O2 sensor is for. It allows the ECU to sort of retune the engine on the move to adapt to different altitudes, weather conditions, temperatures, etc. It also allows the ECU to retune itself to adapt to a new exhaust system or air filter or anything else that the bike might encounter during its lifetime. It will not require a remap, but you do need to give it a little bit of time to adapt to the new situation. That's why conditioning is quite important. Over the years, I've had a lot of people jump into the comments section and tell me that, you know, this procedure is not required, it's not necessary. you can just jump onto the bike and ride it off. And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, I don't know exactly what the percentages are, you will get away with it, but occasionally people encounter what is known as a stuck ECU. When it does happen, usually what happens is the engine warning light will come on to tell you that there's a problem, although that's not always the case. This year alone, so far, I've had 2 people in the comments section pulling the hair out because they've made some sort of modification like a new exhaust or whatever. They've jumped straight on the bike and ridden it, and the ECU has stuck. They've not been able to clear it, the dealership's not been able to clear it. It can be a bit of a headache. It's rare, but it does happen if you're not careful. So as I've said, start your engine up, best practice, allow it to idle for 5 to 10 minutes, don't rev the engine until after that period of time, and you should be good to go. Check your engine warning light, make sure it's not coming on, and then when you take your first ride, just take it easy for the first few miles to make sure that the ECU has made all the changes that it needs to change. At the end of the day, it's your bike, you can do whatever you like with it, but please don't come running to me if you decide to ignore that advice and you come unstuck because of it. Now, as you've just seen me doing here, while the engine is running, just take this opportunity to check all the unions at the exhaust header and where the silencer meets the exhaust header to make sure that you've got no fumes blowing out and that everything's sealed up properly. Oh, and one thing that I should mention, that mid-mounting point for the old system, there are some metal spacers stuck into the rubber grommet. Remove those and put them somewhere safe, otherwise they are going to fall out while you're riding the bike, and it is best to be able to keep them, as I've said earlier on, in case you need to return the bike back to its original specification. As I said at the beginning of this video, I will be doing a full review and sound check of this exhaust system in a subsequent video. We're just sort of a bit stuck with the weather at the moment. I had to rush this whole fitting through before rain stopped play. Now, I always found that Hitchcock's exhaust systems sound much better with the baffles in, so I fitted the baffles that came with the kit as a matter of course. As I said at the beginning, this is not a loud, raughty, hooligan exhaust system. It must be at least half the weight of the original, if not even lighter. But what it does do is it really cleans up the exhaust note. The acoustics are much better. So keep an eye out for that exhaust sound check video coming up as soon as the weather's okay and I can go out and film it. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you would leave a like and consider becoming a subscriber to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. If you do subscribe, make sure that you hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled. I know I say that a lot at the end of this video, but on almost every comment section of every video I've made for the last few weeks, I've had people telling me that they've been long-term subscribers and they've recently discovered that they've been unsubscribed from the channel, or the notifications have been turned off and they don't know why. It's just something that happens with YouTube. I really don't know the reason for it. So please just check your subscription status from time to time and check your notifications are as you left them and haven't been altered since. You can help this channel out in other ways by my Patreon page or through the super thanks button down below. Either way, it's much appreciated. I will of course be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.